afternoon, everyone. As historians, one aspect of our job is to uncover personal experiences of individuals from the past. One aspect of United States history that is particularly difficult for us to research involves the personal experiences of enslaved people from the founding of this country through 1865, when slavery was abolished. One way we can begin to understand some aspects of their daily lives includes attempting to uncover their religious beliefs and practices. Religion can certainly guide individuals' lifestyles, so it is very important to look into the lives of enslaved people who practiced Islam. Many enslaved Africans were from West Africa, which were majority Muslim countries. You can see in the image on the left that the most common areas that enslaved people were from. And you can see on the right where they were most likely to live when in the United States. Between 15 and 33% of enslaved people were Muslim. And for many, this was an important aspect of their culture that they could carry with them when they were stolen from their homeland. Enslaved people may have found comfort in the Quran because it encourages freedom of enslaved people, and at a minimum, it demands treating enslaved people with kindness. There are some quotes from the Quran that encourage allowing enslaved people to earn their freedom, and even suggest that the owners give the enslaved people a financial gift to assist in starting their lives as a free person. For example, Surah 24, Ayah 33 states, "And if any of your slaves ask for a deed in writing to allow them to earn their freedom for a certain sum, give them such a deed. And if you know any good in them, give them something yourselves out of the means that God has given you." This quote demonstrates that it is important to help enslaved people become free and start a successful free life if they choose. Similarly, Surah 90, ayahs 12 through 16 state, "And what will explain to thee the path that is steep? It is the freeing of a slave, or feeding on a day of severe hunger an orphan or a needy person in misery." This verse suggests that freeing enslaved people is a good deed that all people should strive towards. The Prophet Muhammad himself freed his enslaved people. Islam teaches that no one has priority over one another due to ethnicity, but instead by their good deeds. Muslims have been resisting U.S. slavery since its beginning. Conflict between Christians and Muslims has been an aspect contributing to mistreatment of Muslim people for years. One reason that Europeans wanted to sail west looking for a new trade route was in order to avoid crossing rival Muslim nation waters. Here you can see a graphic showing that no matter how Europeans tried to reach India and China for trade, they had to pass through lots of Muslim territory. White people captured Muslim people as slaves during this time period, and the process only grew as the West African Muslim states realized that chattel slavery was their main chance to make a profit. Slavery was the industry of the 1600s. Muslim people in West Africa were often pitted against each other. Most Muslim enslaved people came into slavery through wars between conquering Muslim reformers and their opponents. Jihad groups sometimes claimed to capture people and sell them into slavery when they did not practice the, quote, pure form of Islam, but instead merged it with native African tribal religions. Some of what we know about enslaved Muslim people comes from slave owners. One slave owner states in 1837, "There was one man on this plantation who prayed 5 times every day, always turning his face to the east." Many white Americans did not understand Islam well and got their information from inaccurate sources, such as the book pictured on the left. Interestingly, Thomas Jefferson, a slave owner well aware of the practices of Islam as he owned a Quran himself, actually included references to the Muslim faith in his calls for religious freedom. However, this view was not reflected in any final versions of state constitutions. There were many African people of Muslim heritage in early U.S. history. Some claim that Islam was the original religion of Black Americans, and this aspect of their culture was yet another thing taken away through slavery. Aspects of this ring true, but we also see examples of people who were able to preserve their Muslim faith through their experience with slavery. Among the earliest example of an African Muslim living in the US was Anthony Jansen Can Saleh, who lived in New York City in 1630 and left behind a Quran upon his death. He was the son of a Dutch man and a Moroccan woman and was referred to as a mixed race person. You can see an image of him on the left. Another early Muslim American was Estevancio de Dorantes. He was certainly the first African and the first person of Muslim heritage to travel in the southwestern United States. He acted as an intermediary figure between the white and native people. You can see an image of him on the right. One famous Muslim enslaved person was Omar ibn Said, pictured here. He was highly educated and a devout Muslim. Omar saw the Quran as an anti-slavery text and therefore argued that it was his duty to run away. Unfortunately, he was recaptured and sold to a new white man in North Carolina, where he died just a year before the end of slavery. He wrote a biography in Arabic, and he transcribed surahs of the Quran for other Muslim enslaved people. This biography quotes from surahs, but Omar states that he had converted to Christianity. It seems that Omar had found complementary aspects of these two religions and continued to use his knowledge of the Quran to praise God. Yarrow Mamount was a devout Muslim who gained freedom from slavery at age 60 in 1796. He was able to use his high education, ability to read and write, and his many other talents to work to earn his freedom. He died in 1823 at age 87 in the log cabin he had built for himself in Washington, D.C. People were inspired by his devoutness and hung his portrait in a museum. Another famous enslaved African person who practiced Islam was Abdullah Rahim Ibrahim Ibn Suri. He was known as the Prince of Slaves and was born in Guinea. He was highly educated and spoke Arabic, English, and native African languages. He wrote 2 autobiographies in Arabic. President John Quincy Adams invited him to the White House. Then President Adams freed the Prince of Slaves, but he would not allow him to live in the US as a free man. He and his wife had to leave to go to Liberia and leave their 4 adult children enslaved. The Prince of Slaves died shortly after moving there, but their mother Isabella was able to buy the freedom of 2 of their children who were still enslaved by Thomas Foster. Omar ibn Said and the Prince of Slaves are interesting lives to consider because it seems that their light skin tone, as well as their educated status, may have contributed to some of their privileges. There are writings from white people admiring Said's copper light skin and straight hair. Similarly, the Prince of Slaves describes himself as not having any black blood and that he is purely a Moor. Here I have a map of where people who identify as Moor would be from. The people in these regions would have lighter skin tones than people in other regions. He implies that this gives him a higher status than enslaved people from other parts of Africa. It is interesting to see this form of racism and discrimination between people with lighter tones of brown skin and people who would identify as Black. It is another aspect of life that is important to consider for the historical context of enslaved people in this period. Some enslaved Muslim people were able to escape from their plantations, and it is suspected that they integrated into native tribes and lived among these communities. There are several records of native people with traditionally Muslim names, as well as some cases of previous owners recognizing their slaves among the native population. Other free Muslim people fought in the Revolutionary and Civil Wars, which we suspect again because of traditionally Muslim names appearing on military rosters. Here I have some images of soldiers. Communicating in Arabic also allowed enslaved Muslim people a higher chance at escaping, because the white owners were much less likely to be fluent in Arabic. Enslaved people could sometimes write in Arabic, claim that they were writing Bible verses, but in reality used the language to send messages of escape and rebellion to other Arabic speakers. It is difficult to know what the lives of everyday enslaved Muslim people were like, because these examples of enslaved Muslims were different from the average. Most Muslim Africans who came to the Americas were enslaved and left few records. The Works Progress Administration was able to interview some enslaved people about their daily lives, and from these records, we're able to learn about how Muslim people celebrated their religion by dancing, clapping, and singing in a circle, a practice that continues to this day. I have an image of such a practice here. Other enslaved people report pretending to convert to Christianity in order to gain favor from their owners and possibly go back to Africa through the American Colonization Society. Biographies of early Muslims represent only a tiny portion of all Muslim enslaved people. These particular historical figures, who we have detailed records for, were highly educated. It was remarkable that people like Omar ibn Said knew how to read and write in Arabic due to their Muslim upbringing, giving him the privilege in a society where white people fought to keep enslaved people uneducated. While not everyone's lives were recorded in such detail, historian Muni Ali argues in his article, The Quran and Practice of Islam in America, that the majority of Muslim people continue to practice their religion by simply passing down Quran memorizations, and some even manage to keep copies of the Quran at times. Here are the main resources I used for this project. I used our class readings, including Muni Ali's The Quran and Practice of Islam in America, as well as the video Islam and Juneteenth, Liberating Slaves as a Mandate from Allah, and Omar ibn Said's autobiography. I also found an outside website discussing early enslaved people's relationship with Islam in America. I also used the book, A History of Islam in America, From the New World to the New World Order. If you have any questions about this research or would like to remain in dialogue about these ideas, please do reach out. I am always open to learning more about this topic and apologize if anyone feels any of my comments generalized about the African American experience. I look forward to learning more from all of you listening and improving my future research and views.